Yes?
Mom and I think you don't get enough outdoor exercise, so we bought you a bike.
Thank you, Mama and Dad, but I don't play outside.
It was the cartoon that launched Cartoon Network into the golden age of animation and proved that kids' shows could be smart, sophisticated, and hilarious. A boy genius whose biggest enemy was his own annoying sister became the show that changed everything, transforming a struggling cable channel into an animation powerhouse through the vision of one immigrant animator with a student film project. The student film that became a phenomenon before Dexter's Laboratory became Cartoon Network's flagship series. It existed as Genndy Tartakovsky's student project at CalArts. The original short featured a boy genius trying to work in his secret laboratory while dealing with his destructive sister. A simple premise that captured lightning in a bottle. "I made the short as my thesis film," Tartakovsky revealed. "I had no idea it would become anything beyond a class project." The 7-minute film showcased Tartakovsky's distinctive visual style, bold colors, angular character design, and dynamic composition that stood out from typical animation aesthetics. Cartoon Network executives saw the short at a CalArts screening and recognized something special. The network was desperate for original content to compete with Nickelodeon and Disney, having relied on classic Hanna-Barbera reruns since launching. The What a Cartoon Showcase program became the incubator for Dexter and other shows that would define the network. This experimental anthology allowed animators to create pilots without committing to full series, reducing financial risk while discovering new talent. Why the network took a chance on an unknown animator was simple desperation combined with vision. They needed fresh content and recognized that Tartakovsky's unique style could differentiate their programming from competitors. Genndy Tartakovsky's vision: European animation meets American comedy. Genndy Tartakovsky's background as a Russian immigrant who arrived in America as a child profoundly influenced Dexter's Laboratory's distinctive aesthetic. His exposure to European animation traditions combined with American cartoon sensibilities created something genuinely unique. "I grew up watching Russian cartoons that look completely different from American animation," Tartakovsky explained. "They had different pacing, different design philosophy, different approach to storytelling. This dual influence made Dexter visually and rhythmically distinct from typical American Saturday morning cartoons. The European design sensibility emphasized bold geometric shapes, strong silhouettes, and compositions that prioritized graphic impact over realistic detail. Characters were angular and stylized rather than rounded and cute, giving the show visual sophistication. Why the limited animation style was both artistic choice and budget necessity created happy accident. Tartakovsky made virtue of constraint, using selective movement and strategic camera angles to create dynamic sequences without expensive frame-by-frame animation. How Tartakovsky's influences from Tex Avery to anime shaped the series was evident in rapid-fire gags, exaggerated reactions, and sudden tonal shifts. The show could be slapstick comedy one moment and dramatic science fiction the next, refusing to stay confined to single genre. Dexter's accent, the mystery no one can explain. One of Dexter's Laboratory's most distinctive and inexplicable elements was the protagonist's vaguely European accent, despite being a blonde American kid with completely American parents. This bizarre choice became iconic despite making no logical sense. "We never explained the accent because we couldn't," Tartakovsky admitted. "It just felt right for the character." This affected pseudo-intellectual way of speaking that suggested Dexter was performing being a genius. Why a suburban American child spoke with indeterminate European inflection suggested that Dexter had constructed his entire identity around his perception of what scientists should sound like. The accent was affectation, part of his genius persona. Christine Cavanaugh's vocal performance brought Dexter to life through that distinctive delivery. Part German, part French, part Russian, fully ridiculous. Her commitment to the absurd accent made it believable within the show's heightened reality. The fan theories about why Dexter sounds nothing like his family range from adoption to self-taught foreign language immersion to simply being so pretentious that he developed affected speech. The show's refusal to address the obvious incongruity made it funnier through sheer audacity. Dee Dee, chaos as character. Dee Dee transformed the annoying sister trope into something more complex and beloved. Voice actresses Kat Cressida and Allison Moore brought manic energy to the character that made her simultaneously frustrating and endearing. How Dee Dee represented feminine disruption of masculine order was the show's central dynamic. Dexter tried to impose scientific control while Dee Dee brought chaos, spontaneity, and emotional intelligence that his rigid intellect couldn't comprehend or predict. Dee Dee wasn't stupid, Tartakovsky noted. She just operated on completely different wavelength than Dexter. Her chaos often solved problems his logic couldn't. This nuance elevated her beyond simple obstacle into legitimate alternative perspective. Why the annoying sister became as beloved as the protagonist was her joyful energy and genuine love for her brother. Despite destroying his experiments constantly, Dee Dee's actions came from curiosity and affection rather than malice. The ballet dancer physicality that made Dee Dee's movement unique was carefully choreographed. Her pirouettes, leaps, and graceful destruction were animated with attention to actual dance technique, making her chaos beautiful and deliberate rather than random clumsiness. The secret laboratory, production design. The massive hidden laboratory under Dexter's house became one of animation's most iconic locations through production design that blended retro-futuristic aesthetics with impossible scale. The lab's existence raised obvious questions the show cheerfully ignored. How the lab was designed combined 1950s retrofuturism with contemporary technology. Chrome surfaces, blinking lights, impossible gadgets, and vast spaces that couldn't possibly fit under a suburban house. The visual absurdity was deliberate and celebrated. The retro-futuristic aesthetic drew from Cold War-era science fiction and space-age design, creating timeless environment that didn't feel dated to specific era. Dexter's lab could exist in 1960 or 2060 equally plausibly. The color palette made every frame instantly recognizable. Dexter's signature purple gloves and lab coat, the lab's blues and silvers, Dee Dee's bright pink, all created visual language that communicated character and location immediately. Why Dexter's lab looked unlike anything else on television was Tartakovsky's commitment to bold graphic design over naturalistic rendering. Every element was simplified to essential shapes and colors, creating striking visual clarity that worked on small television screens. The wordless comedy, animation as silent film Dexter's Laboratory, frequently featured episodes with minimal or no dialogue, relying entirely on visual storytelling and physical comedy. This approach demonstrated Tartakovsky's commitment to pure animation as communication medium. The best cartoons don't need dialogue, Tartakovsky believed. If you can tell the story through images and action, that's the strongest form of animation. Episodes like Dexter's Rival contained extended wordless sequences that rivaled silent film comedy. Tartakovsky's commitment to showing rather than telling forced the animation team to communicate everything through character expression, body language, and visual composition. This discipline elevated the show's craft beyond typical television animation. The influence of classic cartoons and silent cinema was obvious. The show channeled Buster Keaton's physical comedy, Chuck Jones's timing, and European animation's visual poetry into contemporary context. How reducing dialogue made the comedy more universal was important for international distribution. Visual gags translated across languages better than verbal humor, making Dexter's Laboratory successful worldwide without extensive localization. The supporting cast: mom, dad, and a monkey. The deliberately generic parents who never noticed their son's massive secret laboratory became running gag that the show never attempted to justify. Their obliviousness was simply accepted reality of Dexter's world. Katsusi's mom was the perpetually cheerful, oblivious matriarch whose face was never fully shown. She existed from nose down, maintaining mystery while providing maternal presence. Her inability to notice anything unusual became increasingly absurd and hilarious. Jeff Bennett's dad represented stereotypical suburban father. Simple, well-meaning, and completely blind to the obvious. His straight man reactions to the chaos around him grounded the show's absurdity in recognizable family dynamics. The supporting cast's simplicity allowed Dexter and Dee Dee to remain focused while providing stable environment for their conflicts and adventures to unfold naturally. The rival, Mandark's villainous genius, Eddie Deazen's vocal performance as Mandark created Dexter's perfect nemesis, another boy genius whose rivalry provided genuine competition rather than simple villainy. Mandark was dark reflection of Dexter's ambitions and insecurities. How Mandark represented Dexter's shadow self was obvious. He was everything Dexter feared becoming: arrogant, isolated, consumed by rivalry rather than scientific curiosity. Their competition brought out both characters' worst tendencies. The distinctive ha 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 laugh became one of animation's most iconic villain signatures. Deazen's deliberately obnoxious delivery made Mandark immediately memorable and perfectly annoying. The cultural references hidden everywhere. Dexter's laboratory was packed with sophisticated references to science fiction, anime, and popular culture that children missed entirely but adults appreciated. This multi-layered approach respected audience intelligence across age groups. Science fiction homages range from obvious Star Wars and Star Trek references to obscure nods to 1950s B-movies and Japanese tokusatsu shows. The references enhanced episodes for knowledgeable viewers without confusing children. The sophisticated humor worked on multiple levels. Kids laughed at physical comedy and colorful chaos, while adults caught references to Stanley Kubrick films, classical music, and scientific concepts presented with surprising accuracy. Episodes like The Big Sister parodied Godzilla movies with loving detail, while Ego Trip referenced time travel classics from The Time Machine to Back to the Future. These homages demonstrated genuine affection for source material. How the show respected its audience's intelligence was revolutionary for children's programming. Tartakovsky refused to talk down to kids, trusting that good storytelling and visual creativity would engage viewers regardless of whether they caught every reference. The production challenges and creative freedom budget constraints forced creative solutions that became Dexter's Laboratory's signature style. Limited animation required strategic choices about what to animate and what to suggest, creating distinctive visual rhythm. The battles with network censors over content were surprisingly minimal. Cartoon Network's desperation for successful original programming gave creators unusual freedom. The network recognized that interference might destroy whatever magic made the short successful. They basically left us alone, Tartakovsky recalled. As long as ratings stayed strong and we hit deadlines, we had creative control most television animators never experience. This freedom allowed experimentation that defined the show's innovative spirit. How Cartoon Network's need for content gave creators freedom was unusual. Typically, networks exercise tight control, but their lack of established formulas for success meant trusting creative vision over focus group testing. The legacy Dexter's Laboratory's success proved that original animation could compete with established brands, launching Cartoon Network's golden age of creator-driven programming. The show opened doors for the Powerpuff Girls, Johnny Bravo, Courage the Cowardly Dog, and others. How Dexter demonstrated that audiences would embrace new characters and innovative animation styles rather than requiring familiar properties changed television animation economics and creative possibilities. The careers launched by the show's creative team were remarkable. Genndy Tartakovsky went on to create Samurai Jack and direct Hotel Transylvania, while other crew members became influential animators, directors, and showrunners throughout the industry. If you've enjoyed these Dexter's Laboratory revelations, watch it again and catch the sophisticated references you missed as a kid. Now get out of my laboratory. Omelette du fromage.